video of our series which deals with rare moves after 1c4. Yeah, this is basically a number of pretty obscure lines, but I think it's still fun to look at. It's just interesting to see what creative players can come up with sometimes. Some of those ideas are not even that bad, some are bad. We will see later. Moves that we have not yet covered but that are pretty respectable are knight c6 and d6 in this position. They are highly transpositional and quite rare, but still worth a look. Let's start with those respectable moves, or let's say not refutable moves. Knight c6. What is the best move here? Maybe d4, but this would involve learning the Chigorin defense, for example, or the Black Knight's Tango and things like that. That's not very practical. It might be, objectively speaking, the best. However, you can just play g3 again. This will very likely transpose after e5. Yeah, this is the most logical move here. Black can try something else, of course. He can go d5, which is better than it looks actually. Takes, queen takes, and it attacks our rook. Yeah, my recommendation is just knight f3, bishop g4. That's, I think, fairly logical. Bishop g2, e5, knight c3, queen d7. This is a pretty decent looking setup for black, but I think that after h3, g4 and knight h4, we are happy to gain the bishop pair in this position. Black looks like he wants to castle long, but I don't think that this is going to be very successful against this bishop. If you dislike that somehow, you can, of course, after knight c6 also play knight c3, which prevents d5. A slight drawback is that after e5, g3, everything will transpose to lines that we have examined, but there is the move bishop b4. Only this one can kind of irritate us a little bit, because in our move orders, the usual c4, e5 move order, we play g3 and then bishop g2. And there is no bishop b4 as a sensible option when there is no knight on c3. White, however, is perfectly fine here. I suggest to go to d5, and after bishop c5, bishop g2, knight f6, for example, opt for an e3 setup. I don't think we should discuss this any further. It's a very obscure move order, and white has alternatives along the way. As I mentioned, just 2g3 is a good option. Black can also go 1d6, which has little independent value, because a quick e5 will follow, or g6, which will transpose to c4, e5 setups, or g6 setups like g3, g6, or e5. It has basically no independent value. Those are the more respectable options. But what are the obscure ones? Okay, d5. Let's have a look at this. C takes, of course, we are happy to trade a c against the d pawn. Can black now transpose to other lines in our series? Probably not. The move queen d5, first of all, is just good for white with normal moves. Yeah, we just play knight c3 and develop. Yeah, knight f6, d4. This is not a Scandinavian. White has a full center here. For example, like bishop f5 and then knight e5 is a good idea. Note that the queen has very little squares after knight c4. Queen b3 is also an idea. So this is a pretty obscure line for good reasons. Can he try to transpose with knight f6? If we go g3 now, or knight c3, we will transpose to lines that we have looked at earlier. But I think this is a little bit, it's not enough, that's what I'm trying to say. The move e4, by the way, that sets this little trap, is not so great, because black has c6. And this is, a bit of compensation. Yeah, I don't think we want to examine that. It just not the most convenient way of playing, which is d4. We transpose to a queen's gambit now, like d4, d5, c4, knight f6, and white here is just better. The reason is that we will get a full center, and it's not a Grunfeld because there's no knight on c3 that black can take. So usually captures on d5. Note that g6 is downright bad because of the queen a4 check, which will ultimately keep the d5 pawn for white. So knight takes d5, and now it's important to know that knight f3 is best. e4, knight f6, knight c3 leads to problems after e5. I mean, problems is a bit strong, but white has no advantage here. Knight f3 is better, a lot better. And now the trick is that after g6, e4, knight b6, h3, white has a very favorable Grunfeld type of position. The knight is not good on b6, he didn't manage to take on c3, and with h3 we prevent bishop g4. This is known for a very long time to be good for white. And this is the best that we can get after c4, d5, so it's worth knowing. Very obscure, of course, but if you get it, play like that, you get a good position. Yeah, what else? We are really getting to the obscure stuff. b5. And there are games with that. Yeah, white takes a6, and now we can take on a6 and then fianchetto, like ba, bishop takes, and then something like knight f3, knight f6, g3, and this cannot be enough compensation. This is not a Benko gambit because white has not yet exposed the center in any way. We can just quickly castle and yeah, just enjoy an extra pawn for not much. Black sometimes plays a6. Yeah, I mean, okay, you can say it's funny to look at these kind of moves in the first place, but yeah, I'm always curious, does that have a point or not? Well, it doesn't have a really great point, but it's not like it loses immediately. So what should we do? g3 or knight c3, both are good. If you play g3, it looks a bit weird now for black. Do you want to play b5? In fact, people have done that. b5, bishop b2, c6. I found games with this kind of things, with this kind of stuff. Yeah, I suggest just b3 and bishop b2 and white is better. If that feels a little bit too slow for you against a6, you can of course play knight c3, but be aware that after e6, you don't have something that is totally great. I mean, it looks strange, I know, but black will either play c5 or d5 and get a somewhat playable position. For example, after e4, he can play c5, and we get some kind of Sicilian where white is probably theoretically a little bit better, but it's not so bad. It's not a refutation of 1a6. And if you go d4 here, which looks also quite normal, what is a6 here? And black can go d5, and it's queen's gambit decline with a6, which is a little bit better for white, but it's a playable opening. So yeah, white can take here, play bishop f4, and black plays often c6 and bishop d6. This has been played by grandmasters, this a6 in the queen's gambit declined. So I don't think that you can refute it totally. Play normal moves. g3 is good. By the way, I've got one option. This is also good. d4, d5, e4. This is something that you can try. It's a little bit, looks a little bit more powerful, but after bishop b7, again, you can go d5 and a little bit better, but it's not like a refutation. I mean, you cannot win in 10 moves against a6. If you want to play something more like our normal stuff, go g3 and b3, or play this full center. It should be good for white. So, anything more obscure? Yes, I got one for you. c4, g5. Yeah, this has been played by some grandmasters, and I really don't know why, but they did. I think that this is one of those moments where we should just take space in the center. Yeah, don't play g3. We want to refute this g5 business, and I think we can. It's really not a good opening. The pawn is hanging on g5, And black can play bishop g7, try to make a gambit out of it, or play h6. After h6 we're just going to play e4 and should have the better position. Bishop g7, I think it makes sense to flick in h4 here, and white should be better. Black sometimes tries this, and yeah, note that taking on g4 drops the d4 pawn, but just knight c3 looks very okay. White's position looks quite menacing in the center, and black has played funky stuff on the king side. The idea usually was to play bishop g7, that the idea that the black players had, and yeah, often they tried c5 next to attack the center. Back like 20-30 years ago, it was believed that bishop takes g5 is not that clear and not that great for white actually, but I looked at it with the modern engine. You can refute this in a couple of minutes. Black cannot play this at all. Bishop g7 already should yeah, lead to serious problems. c5 is what black is doing. Here it's the only justification, get some counterplay. Yeah, we go knight f3, and now black can try yeah, tactical ideas, let's say, on b2 with queen b6, but we are always in great shape. Let's have a quick look there. I mean, you probably never get it on the board, but it's just yeah, fun to tear the opponent down. So knight c6 maybe, go d5, bishop b2, oops, knight bd2. We give up the exchange here, of course, but have a look at this position. Now we attack the rook now, so knight d4, takes, queen takes, f6, e4. Yeah, white has fantastic compensation here. It's a pawn for the exchange, two bishops, and black's position is a complete wreck. Moves. I can take here and then play queen to b6, attacking this. But we don't need to worry here, just knight b5. Black grabs here, we develop. The idea is knight d5, and black absolutely cannot play bishop takes a1. Something like that is totally unplayable. There's knight d5 coming, and we have an x-ray on the rook. Yeah, that looks very weird. Black has tried queen b6, and we just develop again. Just knight c3, c takes, there's knight d5, and after queen takes b2 we play bishop d2. This is maybe the only move that needs to be remembered. We cover this, rook b1, knight b5 is a threat. Yeah, queen b6 for example is the best move now, and then after a simple d5, d6, e4, white's position is a lot better. We have a useful half open b file, and black just lacks the g pawn here. It's just a Benoni where the g pawn was traded against the b pawn. Black's position is pretty terrible. So g5 is bad due to this concrete refutation. In fact, there are quite a number of games where white has not done that, where he played like g3, knight c3, it's kind of routine moves, and g5 is really too bad to play in such a routine way. We should go for refutation with d4 and bishop takes g5. Yeah, this is the final video of the English opening repertoire.